Thanks, I made that up on an airplane. I was sitting there and I wrote the whole song, thinking as I was leaving Halifax 4 days ago or 5 days ago how beautiful the windows all were. And that got me thinking about being a kid and seeing musicians play on television and seeing them play at different places and seeing the Smothers Brothers. And man, nobody affected me as much as the Smothers Brothers because my parents would let me stay up to watch the show. They would want me to go to sleep, I would beg them. And that was when I learned what a straight man was. And that was Dickie Smothers, and he always played the straight man. And Tommy Smothers was so funny. So, anyways, the Smothers Brothers were so popular that CBS said to them, "You can have any guest you want on the show. Pick anybody." And they said, "We want Pete Seeger." Well, this was really controversial because it was 1967. 1967, so the United States is mired in the Vietnam War, and they want Pete Seeger, so CBS knows what's going to happen. So they get really scared because Pete Seeger, he was a communist. He was in the Weavers during the McCarthy witch hunt. So they were really worried. So Seeger comes out, he does 3 songs. One of the songs was a song called Waist Deep in the Big Muddy. So back then we would still have what we call water cooler moments, where the next day people would talk about what they saw on some program that really moved them. Kind of like the time Elvis Costello played Radio on Saturday Night Live when he wasn't supposed to. So they had these water cooler moments, which I think are harder and harder to have today because we have so many different genres and subgenres. We got 800 channels. We're picking our own things to watch. But back then, man, they had this water cooler moment. And so Seeger plays Waist Deep in the Big Muddy, and CBS flies the tape back to New York, and they cut it out because they think it's an anti-war song. They're like, this is going to be bad. So the Smothers Brothers pitch a fit. And CBS says, okay, we'll run it. So 7 months later, they ran it. And Pete Seeger, if you hear him in interviews, he says, that was the beginning of our turnaround of the public consciousness of the Vietnam War. So he played this song, they showed it, and it was a pretty powerful moment to see Pete Seeger sing Waist Deep in the Big Muddy. And then LBJ decided not to run again. And then you know what happened, Nixon came on. So anyways, I wanted to learn this song Waist Deep in the Big Muddy for you. It was back in 1942, I was a member of a good platoon. We were on maneuvers in Louisiana one night by the light of the moon. The captain told us to ford a river, that's how it all begun. We were knee-deep in the big muddy, and the big fool says to push on. The sergeant said, sir, are you sure this is the best way back to the base? Sergeant, go on, I forded this river about a mile above this place. It'll be a little soggy, but just keep slogging, we'll soon be on dry ground. We were waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool says to push on. The sergeant said, sir, with all this equipment, no man will be able to swim. Sergeant, don't be a nervous Nelly, the captain said to him. All we need is a little determination, men follow me, I'll lead on. We were neck deep in the big muddy, and the big fool says to push on. Well, all at once the moon clouded over, we heard a gurgling cry. A few seconds later the captain's helmet was all that floated by. The sergeant said, turn around men, I'm in charge from now on. And we just made it out of the big muddy with the captain dead and gone. We stripped and dived and found his body stuck in the old quicksand. I guess he didn't know that the water was deeper than the place he'd once before been. Another stream had joined the big mud about a half a mile from where we'd gone. And we were lucky to escape from the big muddy when the big fool said to push on. I ain't gonna point any morals, I'll leave that for yourself. Maybe you're still walking, you're still talking, you'd like to keep your health. But every time I read the paper, them old feelings come on. We're waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool says to push on. Waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool says to push on. Waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool says to push on. Waist deep, neck deep, soon even a tall man will be over his head. Well, waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool says to push on.